Bonnie Bruderer here, the founder of Binge Networks, and you are watching Behind the Creator, where we bring you different content creators that are on Binge Networks, and we talk about their story and really what led to them becoming a content creator. So today, I'm very excited. We have one of our favorite channels here, the Lucky Ones, and I'm really happy to introduce you to Joseph Alvaro. And let's talk a little bit about Lucky Ones. Tell the viewers what's behind your content.
Well, we started, my partner and I, we came up with the concept. We both lost our wives, and we were out during a snowstorm a few years back in Manhattan. We were talking about, how you deal with having lost your wife and raising a family, being a single father. And he asked me a question that was very interesting. He looked at me and said, how do you deal with all this? And I said, well, I had 27 years of a wonderful marriage, and I'm really lucky. I'm one of the lucky ones. And he looked at me and said, I can't believe you said that. I went to a bereavement group, he said, and I met this older gentleman in his 70s. And we were walking out of the session one day, and uh, I turned to him and said, don't you wish sometimes you were never married so you didn't have to deal with this kind of grief? And the fellow looked at him and said, no, not at all. I said, I'm one of the lucky ones. I had a wonderful marriage, and I cherish every moment I ever had. So when I said that to Matt, it kind of jogged his memory, and he said, that's so strange that you and he said the same thing. I think it'd be fun to do something where we could allow people to tell their story about someone they were lucky to have known that's passed away, whether it's a wife, a friend, a colleague, a relative, and put it up on the internet. So we started this by interviewing just random people. We selected people, asked them if they wanted to do interviews, and we do a 6-minute interview, 7 minutes, somewhere in there, and we incorporate pictures and video and whatever else they might give us. We cut it into the video, and we come out with a beautiful piece that celebrates the common humanity that we all share with one another, and that's the love we have for someone special in our lives, whether it's a mentor or a friend or a relative. So from there, we put together a series of interviews. We cut it down to a 25-minute, 26-minute episode, and we submitted it to a film festival. We won the film festival. And then from there, we started just producing more and more content. And then our publicist said, so why don't you do street stories, like interview just people on the street, like just random people. So we started another segment of our content library, which is street stories. And we go out and we interview people at malls, festivals, doesn't matter where there's a large gathering of people. And they tell us wonderful stories about, different people that have touched their lives. And we cut those down into like 60 and 30-second pieces where we put them on YouTube Shorts, Instagram, Facebook, all the social media channels. So we've got two kinds of content, one for social media and then one for something like what Binge does, which is more episodic. So we've been recently interviewing celebrities, which helps to underwrite us going out and interviewing everyday people. So the fact that the celebrities draw people to what we're doing, and then that'll allow us to just go out and produce and interview just random folks from all over the place. So we don't have just celebrities, because it's more than just celebrities.
It really is. And I love your content specifically so much because it's the equalizer, right? I mean, we have over 100 channels on Binge, and if you have like children's content, it probably means you have a child, or you might like horror movies, but like you have content that's created. There's not one person I know in the world that hasn't lost somebody. So it's something that really speaks to the heart of everybody. But it's something that you don't really think about so much. It's a painful subject for a lot of people, or it's something that you don't, aside from eulogy or at a service, you don't really get to share those things. So I love that you've created an everyday way to share that memory and share that knowledge with people.
Thank you. Well, what we found, it was very interesting. We found that a lot of people, especially in our society, are somewhat reluctant to talk about someone who's died. And it's not because they don't want to talk about them. They're afraid it'll make other people around them uncomfortable. So
Yeah.
this way we haven't, when people talk about death, a lot of people get kind of squirrely. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to, they get all weird. And I think this is a way for people to talk about someone that meant something to them special, change their lives in a very safe way, and they can celebrate that person. It's
Yeah.
not a mourning. You know, what we talk about is it's really TLO is a unique journey from grief to gratitude, where you actually feel lucky to have known that person, to have had them in your
Yeah.
life. You know, and that's the whole point. We're like the end. We're at the end of grief. We're not at the beginning stage of dealing with the loss. We're at the end where you've given over the fact that person has died and they're no longer with you, but they are with you. They're in your thoughts. They're in your soul. You carry them with you. So we created a way where people could celebrate that in a safe environment. It's really interesting. A lot of the people we interview, when they're done, they say, "Wow, thank you. That was really
Mhm.
cathartic. Thank you." And I think it's because they've never had the opportunity just to like explore how they felt and celebrate that person's life.
It's really interesting. A lot of times I'll listen to your episodes, while I'm editing or I'm doing emails with something in the background. And what I find is that no matter who the person is or what they say, it reminds me of someone that I've lost. Or my grandma used to do that little thing too, or my cousin did. It's like it makes you think. It just reminds you of the people that you love, because there's a lot of commonalities, right? If someone's taking the time to say what they remember and love and how that person inspired them, there's obviously a lot of good there. And I think we can all appreciate that in people that we've lost. So it's
Yeah,
really,
I think it's important that we have continuing bonds with the people we've lost. You,
yeah.
you don't just shut that off. I mean, they're not, it's not something that you just set aside.
Well, and I think this is a really great way that people can live on. I'm a newer parent. I have a daughter that's almost 4, and I lost my mom when I was in my young 20s, and she keeps asking about her recently. And so I try to do something similar, in my own little way. I try to tell her a story of something rather than a sad thing, like, oh, there was this loss, and just try to tell her something that's meaningful in today's world, or, how that person was, so she can kind of live with that person in her life, even the tiniest bit.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's really important because what it does is it gives us a sense of our history and
Yeah,
it connects us to past generations. And I think
absolutely.
that's important. I think that's really important. Now, when you talk about friends and mentors and things, it's a different kind of an impact. Those are like we did an interview just recently with Robert Sean Leonard. He was in House. He played Wilson in House
Yeah.
and Dead Poet Society, and he's been in quite a few movies. And he's a actor. He's a stage actor predominantly, and he loves doing it. And his life changed at the Globe Theater when he was 24 when he worked with Richard Easton. He had been on Broadway. He'd just done a movie, Kenneth Branagh's Much Ado About Nothing with Denzel Washington, and he'd done Age of Innocence. And he was going on about how wonderful all this was, and he'd just done a Broadway play, and Kevin Kline came, and it got great reviews. And they were at a party, and Richard looked at him and said, Robert, I don't know you very well. You're a young man, but let me tell you something. None of that means anything. None of it.
Yeah.
What matters is what you do today and how you live your life. All that other stuff doesn't mean anything. At the end of the day, who do you go home to? Who loves you? That's what's important in life. He said, and he told me, I don't know if this will, if you'll understand this now or later, but I just thought I should tell you that.
I love
Robert said, that impacted me immediately, and he's lived his life like that ever since. It's remarkable, and he's worked with Robert in numerous plays, and in fact, later on, years later, they worked on Broadway on a Tom Stoppard play about S.E. Houghton, and they both won Tonys for playing the same character
Yeah. Amazing.
at different ages. And it's wonderful. So it came full circle. The thing where he had worked as a young man, and then later on in his years, he again worked with the same actor, and it was kind of special. They both won Tonys. I mean, how many times has that happened?
Well, and think now, because of what you've created with the lucky ones, that story is going to touch hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of other lives, because
I
it's
hope
going to
so.
live on just from that one, passing conversation. Who knows if that person thought they were going to be inspiring all of these people when they doled out that wisdom, but now it lives on. So
Right, and that's and even with I remember interviewing a fella, one of our street stories. He was older gentleman. I'd say is probably 60s or so. A very big, brawny guy, and he was talking about his brother-in-law, and he didn't have any brothers himself, but this brother-in-law was really special to him, and he spoke about how he bonded with him and how he missed him so much, to the point where he took his clothing and created a quilt out of it. He
Hmm,
made a quilt. This is a large Hispanic man that's like 6'4", and he made a quilt of his brother-in-law's clothes because he wanted something to remember him by and to keep, and just
amazing.
mental. Yeah, the stories you hear are amazing.
I
It,
love
it,
it.
they run the gamut.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know what our role is, we work with the lucky ones to help get them on streaming companies. So we've got them on Amazon, a few other major players, they're on Apple TV, Roku. So our goal is to help get these out in front of as many eyeballs as possible and to help inspire others. You shared one story. Are you able to talk about any other celebrities or anything else exciting that's coming up on the show?
Well, we're hoping to. Right now, we're in the middle of editing Porter Carroll Jr. He was the founder of Atlantic Star. I don't know if you remember in the '70s group Atlantic Star. You're probably
I
too
don't.
young to remember.
I was too.
You're probably way too young to remember. But anyways, they had a nice run in the '70s and into the '80s, and then Porter stopped doing music because the band kind of died off. And then years later, a friend called him up and said, Hall and Oates are looking for a percussionist. Would you like to join? So now he's with Hall and Oates, and they tour all over the world together. And they go out for 10 days at a time. We're editing his. We're finishing up that. We're getting ready. Hopefully, Harlan Coben, the author.
Okay.
Yeah, we've spoken to him. When his book drops in March, he said he'd be interested in doing an interview. Until
Okay.
then, until then, he's knee deep in writing, writing the book and editing. Um, and then we're looking for folks like, we're talking to Ethan Hawke's people. Um, so we're just, different people. We're looking for celebrities as far as like athletes, news folks. I mean, anyone that's got kind of a following,
Mm,
promote what we're doing so that we can afford to do regular day people. It's
yeah.
really that's really that business model is really simple, because they're the people that get the eyeballs. And
Yeah.
then when people are watching, they're more inclined to watch another story. And they're more inclined to watch a story from someone that they don't know just based on the little title that we have and what it's about.
I love it. You should look at Anderson Cooper. His big new thing is grief and loss. He has a big podcast out right now. So,
I know, and it's hard to get to Anderson. We've tried. It's really hard. They all have these gatekeepers.
yeah.
They're
Well, maybe he'll see the show and
maybe.
it work.
Yeah, it's interesting because the reps look at it as like, well, there's no money in it. There's nothing in it for me. It's like, you're right. There's nothing in it for you. Really not about
Everything
you,
that there is.
not about them. It's about the relationship with someone special, and it's not exploitative. So
Right.
there's no money here for those guys. So they're often they're not interested, which
Uh,
is hard nut to crack. I was just talking to one of my friends who he's a well-known producer, created a couple of hit TV shows, and I was talking to him about who can we approach, and he said, I tried a couple very famous actresses that he's worked with, and their agents and their reps just like blow him off, and it's like this guy had two number one shows, and they just kind of like go eh. So it's really kind of hard. You got to penetrate through them to get to the people. Once we get to someone and we explain to what we're doing and what it's about, they're like, yeah, I know someone I want to talk about. Because
yeah.
I want to talk about someone that really impacted their lives and someone special.
Absolutely. No, you'll go through the heart. I think you're going to attract a big audience, and
I
we're
hope
hoping to help with that. So excellent. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. And for everybody watching, if you would like to check out the Lucky Ones, if you haven't yet, you can go to trybinge.tv. We have a 30-day free trial. You can watch the Lucky Ones. There's about 10,000 videos and films with new content added daily. So you can check that out. And thank you so much, everybody, for watching.
Thank you for having me. You have a great day.
Have a great day.
Bye bye.